I used to think parks were safe. You know, open spaces, families around during the day, well-lit paths. But parks change when the sun goes down, the shadows get longer, the sounds become different, and sometimes you're not alone out there, even when you think you are. The 3 stories I'm about to share were sent to me by people who experienced something in a park that they can't explain, something that made them question whether they were ever truly safe in those open spaces. These aren't legends. These aren't urban myths. These are real experiences from real people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. What happened to them might seem impossible, but I need you to understand something. Every single detail is exactly as they described it. And after hearing these, you might think twice before cutting through that park after dark. So turn off your lights, put in your headphones, and whatever you do, don't go outside until you've finished listening. I'm a night shift nurse, so my schedule is completely backwards from most people. I get off work at midnight, and by the time I get home, I'm too wired to sleep. So I started taking walks around 1 or 2 a.m. just to decompress before bed. There's a park about 3 blocks from my apartment, nothing fancy. Just your standard neighborhood park with a playground, some benches, and a running path that loops around the perimeter. During the day, it's full of kids and families. At night, it's completely empty. Or at least it's supposed to be. This happened about 4 months ago, late September. The weather was starting to turn cold, and there was this fog that night, the kind that hangs low to the ground and makes everything look blurry under the streetlights. I was doing my usual loop, listening to a podcast, just trying to clear my head after a rough shift. As I passed the playground, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. Movement. I pulled out one earbud and stopped walking. The swings were moving, not swaying gently like they do when there's wind, actually moving back and forth like someone had just gotten off them. But all 3 swings were empty, and there wasn't any wind that night. The fog was completely still. I stood there watching them for maybe 20 seconds. Slowly they came to a stop. I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe a cat had jumped off, or I'd just caught them at the tail end of moving from earlier. I put my earbud back in and kept walking. That's when I heard it. A child's laughter. Faint, but clear enough that I heard it over my podcast. I stopped again and pulled both earbuds out. The park was silent. No laughter, no voices, nothing. Just a distant hum of traffic from the main road. I should have left right then. I know that now. But something made me walk closer to the playground. The area was lit by a single street light that cast long shadows across the mulch and equipment. The swings were completely still now. I scanned the whole playground, the slide, the climbing structure, the monkey bars. Nothing. No kids, no animals, nobody. I was about to turn around when I heard it again. Laughter. Multiple children this time, like they were playing tag or hide and seek. The sound was coming from the climbing structure, a big wooden castle-looking thing with tunnels and platforms. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded wrong in the empty park, too loud. The laughter stopped immediately. I waited, my heart starting to pound. The fog seemed thicker suddenly, pressing in around the edges of the playground. I could feel sweat on my palms despite the cold. "If someone's out here, this isn't funny," I said. Still nothing. I should have left. I really should have. But I needed to know if someone was actually in that climbing structure. if some teenagers were screwing around or if there were actual kids out here at 1:30 in the morning. I walked to the structure and peered into one of the tunnels. It was dark inside, too dark to see all the way through. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it through. Empty. I checked the other tunnel, also empty. I walked around to the slide side and looked up at the platforms. Nothing, no one. But then I heard footsteps, running footsteps on the wooden platforms above me, moving fast, like a child sprinting from one side to the other. I shined my light up and saw nothing, but I could hear it clearly, small feet pounding on wood, making the whole structure creak and shake slightly. "Who's up there?" My voice cracked. The footsteps stopped, and then, from the platform directly above my head, I heard breathing. Short, quick breaths, like someone trying to catch their breath after running, but I couldn't see anyone. My light was pointed right at the platform, and there was nobody there. The breathing got louder, faster, like whoever it was hyperventilating. I backed away from the structure, my phone light shaking in my hand. That's when I heard the voice. "Can you see me?" It was a child's voice. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old. It came from the platform above, where the breathing had been coming from, where there was absolutely no one standing. I didn't answer. I just stood there, frozen, my light still pointed at the empty platform. I said, "Can you see me?" The voice was more insistent now, almost frustrated. "No," I whispered. It was a long pause. The breathing had stopped. The whole park felt like it was holding its breath. "Good," the voice said. "Don't look." I ran. I don't remember the run home clearly. I just remember my legs moving, my breath burning in my chest, and the feeling that if I looked back, I would see something I couldn't unsee. When I got to my apartment, I locked every door and window. I stood in my living room shaking for 10 minutes before I could even move. I haven't walked through that park at night since. I drive an extra 15 minutes to work now, taking a route that goes nowhere near it. During the day, I've driven past a few times, and the playground looks completely normal. Kids playing, parents watching, everything peaceful and ordinary. But sometimes when I'm lying in bed at night, I think about that voice. The way it said, "Don't look," with such certainty, like it knew something I didn't, like it was protecting me from something, or maybe protecting itself. I still don't know if I was supposed to see something that night, or if I was saved by not being able to. And honestly, I hope I never find out. I'm a pretty routine person. I run the same loop every evening, same time, same route. It's a 5-mile path that cuts through Riverside Park, which runs along, you guessed it, the river in my city. The park is popular during the day, but by 8 p.m. it's mostly empty, except for a few other regular runners like me. I'm telling you this because I know that park. I know every bench, every tree, every turn in the path. I know what normal looks like there. This was about 3 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday, already dark by the time I started my run around 7:45 p.m. The path is lit, but the lighting is pretty sparse lamps every 100 feet or so, with long stretches of darkness in between. The park is bordered by trees on one side and the river on the other, so once you're on the path, you're kind of isolated. I was about 2 miles in when I first noticed him. He was standing off the path, maybe 20 feet back in the tree line, just barely visible in the shadows between streetlights. I only saw him because I happened to glance over at the wrong moment. He was completely still, just standing there, facing the path. Facing me, I kept running. You see weird stuff in parks, sometimes homeless people, people on drugs, teenagers drinking. I've learned not to make eye contact and just keep moving. So that's what I did. But about a quarter mile later, I saw him again. This time he was closer to the path, maybe 10 feet back from the edge, standing next to a tree. Same posture, completely still, watching. I could see him better under this streetlight. Tall, wearing a dark hoodie, hands in his pockets. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could feel him watching me. My pace quickened. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe it was a different person. Maybe I was imagining things. Then I saw him a third time. He was ahead of me now, which didn't make sense. I'd been running at a steady pace, and there was no way someone could have cut through the trees fast enough to get ahead of me without running. But there he was, same hoodie, same stance, standing in the shadows just off the path. I stopped running. My heart was hammering, and it wasn't from the exercise. The path ahead curved away from the river and into a section bordered by trees on both sides. It was one of the darkest parts of the route, with longer gaps between streetlights. I looked behind me, considering turning back. The path was empty. When I looked forward again, he was gone. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, trying to decide what to do. Every instinct told me to turn around, but that meant running back past 2 points where I'd already seen him. Going forward meant going through that dark section, but it was also the faster route out of the park. I decided to keep going. I started running again, faster this time, my eyes scanning the tree line on both sides. My breathing was too loud in my ears. Every shadow looked like a person. Every rustle in the leaves made me want to sprint. I made it to the dark section. The streetlight behind me faded, and I was running in near complete darkness, just the faint glow from the next lamp somewhere ahead. My footsteps echoed on the asphalt. That was the only sound, my feet hitting the ground, my breath, and the distant rush of the river. Then I heard the second set of footsteps. They were behind me, matching my pace almost perfectly. Not running, but walking fast. Heavy steps, deliberate, steady. I ran faster, and the footsteps stayed the same distance behind me. Not gaining, but not falling back either. I could see the next streetlight ahead, maybe 50 feet away. I pushed harder, my legs burning. The footsteps behind me continued at that same walking pace, not hurrying. Like whoever it was knew they didn't need to run. I burst into the circle of light from the street lamp and immediately spun around. The path behind me was empty, completely empty. No one walking, no one running, nobody. Just a dark path stretching back into shadow, but I could still hear the footsteps. They had stopped when I stopped, but now they started again. Walking, coming closer, from the darkness where I couldn't see. I didn't wait to see what emerged from that shadow. I turned and ran as fast as I've ever run in my life. My lungs were screaming, my legs felt like they were going to give out, but I didn't slow down. I didn't look back. The footsteps stayed behind me the entire time, always the same distance back. Never gaining, never falling behind. Just there, following. I made it out of the park and onto a lit street with traffic and people. The moment I crossed from the park path onto the sidewalk, the footsteps stopped. I finally looked back. No one was there. The park entrance was empty. I stood there on that busy sidewalk, doubled over, gasping for air, while people walked past me like nothing was wrong. I must have looked insane. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and called my roommate to pick me up. I couldn't make myself walk the 6 blocks home. I just couldn't. She found me sitting on a bench under a streetlight, still staring at the park entrance. "What happened?" she asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't tell her the truth. I said I'd twisted my ankle. She drove me home, and I spent the rest of the night with every light in my apartment turned on. Here's the thing that keeps me up at night. I've been trying to rationalize it. Maybe the footsteps were an echo. Maybe someone was in the trees and I just couldn't see them. Maybe I was so scared that I imagined it. But I can't explain how he kept appearing ahead of me. And I can't explain how the footsteps matched my pace so perfectly, like whoever it was measuring their steps to mine, like they were playing with me. I haven't run in that park since. I joined a gym with treadmills, which I hate, but it's better than the alternative. Sometimes I drive past the park entrance on my way home from work, and I look at that path disappearing into the darkness. And sometimes I swear I can see someone standing there in the tree line, just beyond the light, just standing, watching the path, waiting for the next person to run by alone. This happened during spring break of my junior year. My friends and I, there were 4 of us, decided to have a bonfire in Lincoln Woods, this big state park about 20 minutes from campus. The park allows fires in designated areas if you get a permit, but we didn't have one. We were just planning to find a spot deep in the woods where no one would see us. Yeah, I know, stupid, but we were 20 years old and felt invincible. We went in around 9 p.m. The park officially closes at sunset, but the gates don't actually lock, so people go in after dark all the time. We parked near one of the trailheads and hiked about a mile into the woods, far enough that we'd be away from the main paths. There were 4 of us, me, Tyler, James, and Madison. Tyler and James were carrying the firewood and beer. Madison and I had blankets and snacks. We were using our phone flashlights to see, joking around, not taking it seriously at all. We found a clearing that seemed perfect. It was surrounded by thick trees, with a natural ring of rocks in the center, like people had made fires there before. We set everything up, got the fire going, and settled in. For a while, it was great. We were drinking, talking, laughing. The fire was warm. The stars were out. It felt like exactly the kind of memory we'd look back on after graduation. Around 10:30, Tyler said he needed to piss and walked off into the trees. We barely noticed. Madison was telling some story about her roommate, and James was trying to make the fire bigger by adding more wood. Tyler came back about 5 minutes later. I noticed his expression first. He looked confused, maybe a little concerned. "Did you guys hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" James said. "There's a car out there. I could hear the engine running." We all stopped talking. Madison turned down the music on her phone. We listened. At first, I didn't hear anything except the fire crackling and the usual woods, sounds whined in the trees, the occasional bird. But then I heard it. A car engine. Distant, but definitely there. It sounded like it was idling. "Maybe it's someone else having a fire," Madison said. "We're like a mile from the parking lot," I said. "Do you think someone drove in here?" "There are some fire roads," James said. "Service vehicles use them. Maybe it's a ranger." That made us all nervous. If it was a ranger, we were screwed. Open containers, no permit, trespassing after hours. Tyler kicked dirt on the fire to make it smaller. We all stayed quiet, listening. The engine sound continued. It didn't move, just stayed in one spot, idling. After a few minutes, James said, "I'm gonna check it out. If it's a ranger, I'd rather talk to them than have them find us." "I'll come with you," Tyler said. They grabbed one phone flashlight and headed into the woods in the direction of the sound. Madison and I stayed by the fire, which was now reduced to a small pile of embers. "This is so stupid," Madison whispered. "We should have just gone to someone's apartment." "Yeah," I agreed. We waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The engine sound was still there, unchanged. Tyler and James should have reached it by now, or at least called back to us. I pulled out my phone to text Tyler. No signal. I showed Madison. She checked her same thing. "Did you have signal before?" she asked. I tried to remember. I hadn't checked my phone since we'd been sitting here. "I don't know," I said. We waited another 5 minutes. The fire was almost completely out now, and the woods around us seemed darker than before. The engine sound continued its steady idle. "Something's wrong," Madison said. She stood up. "We need to find them." We gathered our stuff quickly, leaving the blankets and most of the beer. I used my phone light to lead the way in the direction James and Tyler had gone. We called their names softly, not wanting to attract attention if there really was a ranger out there. No response. We walked for maybe 10 minutes, much farther than they should have gone. The engine sound was getting louder, but we still couldn't see any headlights or vehicle. Just trees and darkness. "Tyler," Madison called louder. "This isn't funny." Still nothing. Then my phone light caught something ahead. A tire. We got closer and found a truck parked between trees, its engine running, headlights off. It was an old pickup, brown or tan, covered in mud and dents. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside. "Hello?" I called out. "Tyler? James?" The truck just sat there, engine rumbling. No response. No movement. Madison grabbed my arm. "We need to go," she whispered. "Right now, but Tyler and James, we need to go." The panic in her voice convinced me. We turned around and started walking quickly back toward the clearing. Behind us, I heard the truck door open. Not slam, just the creak of hinges and the click of the latch. We started running. I could hear footsteps behind us now, crunching through the leaves and brush. Heavy steps, not hurrying, just steady and deliberate. We were running as fast as we could through the dark woods, branches whipping at our faces, roots trying to trip us. My phone light bounced wildly, barely showing us the way. "The clearing," Madison gasped. "Get to the clearing and then run to the car." We burst into the clearing where our fire had been. I expected to see Tyler and James there, but it was empty. Our stuff was still scattered around the dead fire. The footsteps behind us had stopped. I spun around, shining my light back into the trees. I couldn't see anyone, but I could feel them there, watching us. "Come on." Madison grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the trail that led back to the parking lot. We ran down the path, our phone lights barely keeping us from falling. I kept expecting to hear the footsteps behind us again, or to see headlights cutting through the trees, but there was nothing, just silence and darkness. We made it to the parking lot in half the time it had taken us to hike in. My car was still there, sitting alone under a broken streetlight. We jumped in, locked the doors, and I started the engine with shaking hands. Should we call the police? Madison asked. And tell them what? That our friends disappeared while we were illegally drinking in a closed park? We sat there for a minute, trying to figure out what to do. Then Madison's phone buzzed. She had signal again. She looked at the screen and her face went pale. "It's Tyler," she said. She showed me the text. "Don't come back in here. We're okay. Get out of the park." "What does that mean?" I asked. "Where are they?" She was already calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried James, same thing. Another text came through from Tyler. "Please just leave. We'll meet you at campus." Madison and I looked at each other. Every instinct told me to drive away, but I couldn't just leave them. Before I could decide, headlights appeared on the park road behind us. A truck was coming toward the parking lot. The same truck, I was sure of it. I didn't wait to confirm. I threw the car in reverse, backed out of the spot, and drove toward the park exit as fast as I dared. In my rearview mirror, I saw the truck pull into the parking lot and stop. Its headlights were pointing at where we'd just been. We drove straight back to campus. Madison tried calling Tyler and James over and over, but neither one answered. We went to Tyler's dorm and pounded on his door. No answer. James's apartment, same thing. At 3 a.m., they finally texted us, both of them. They said they were fine, that they'd gotten lost in the woods, and it took them a while to find their way back to their cars. They'd parked somewhere different than us, apparently. But here's the thing. We only took one car. My car. We'd all driven there together. When we asked them about it, they stopped responding. The next day, I saw Tyler on campus and tried to talk to him about what happened. He looked at me like I was crazy and said we had a nice fire. Nothing weird happened, and he didn't know what I was talking about. James said the same thing. Both of them act like that night was completely normal. Madison and I know what we experienced. We know what we heard, what we saw, what we felt. But Tyler and James have completely different memories, or they're lying, or I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've driven past Lincoln Woods a few times since then. During the day, it looks beautiful, peaceful. Families hiking, people having picnics, just a normal state park. But at night, when I'm lying in bed trying to sleep, I think about that truck idling in the woods. I think about the footsteps. And I think about Tyler's text, "Don't come back in here." Not "don't come back in here." Like he was warning us about something specific, something he'd found or something that had found him. I don't go to parks at night anymore. None of us do, not me, not Madison. And if Tyler and James still do, I don't want to know about it, because something happened to them in those woods. Something that changed their memories or scared them so badly that they'd rather lie about it than face the truth. And whatever it was, I'm terrified that it's still out there, still waiting, still watching for the next group of stupid kids who think they're invincible.
Back before phones and social media took over the planet, we actually had to go outside as kids. Maybe it's just where I live, but I don't see kids riding their bikes around or playing ding-dong ditch or doing any of those late-night troublesome kid activities anymore. But when I was a kid, and I'm talking anywhere from 9 to 17 years old, I was always outside with friends. At my childhood home, There was a park down the block from me that some of my friends and I would use as a hangout spot, especially at night since our parents would get mad at us for being loud. The park was perfect because it had a small patch of woods on 3 sides, and then it faced the street on the 4th side, and across from the park was another small patch of woods. So basically, we didn't have any neighboring houses watching us or calling the cops on us for making too much noise when we were in the park. This happened when I was like 13, that age where we were riding bikes to get literally everywhere every day. I think that day in question was a Saturday, and we had ridden to a nearby pizza place a little earlier, then went back to my friend Tony's house, which was also not far from my house. The 6 of us were hanging out in his backyard until his mom came outside and yelled at him to either be quiet, send his friends home, or go hang out somewhere else. By this point, 3 of our other friends decided to go home. Me, Tony, and our friend Rob decided to go ride to the park instead of calling it a night. It was only about a 5-minute bike ride, and there was something so refreshing about riding bikes at night. It felt easier and more relaxing. So the 3 of us got to the park, and to describe the park besides its surroundings, the actual park had a small baseball field, a small bleachers stand, a couple typical park benches, and a pretty decently sized playground with a swing set. We would always chill on the actual playground because it was a cool, elevated hidden surface to just hang out on. At some point when we were chilling on the playgrounds, Tony went, "Shh, did you hear that?" And we all stopped talking for a few moments to listen. When nothing happened, Tony explained that he thought he heard a footstep or some kind of thump on the playground that wasn't us. So naturally, we all kind of took a quick glance around the playgrounds and ultimately didn't see anyone. But probably a few minutes later, there was a sound that we all heard this time, and it did sound like some kind of thud emanating from somewhere on the physical playground itself. Now we were slightly unsettled, because we were almost certain someone else was there making that noise. So we took another peep, this time actually getting up and walking around, and even calling out asking who was there. Of course, there was no response. So eventually, we settled back down up on the playground. We both for another few minutes until we heard yet another sound. This time it was a much more unsettling sound. It was the sound of a voice, a child's voice, and it came from inside the slide. One of those twirling metal slides you see at most typical playgrounds. I'm not gonna lie, when we all heard it, we genuinely freaked out. Even though yes, we did hear some weird sounds on the playground, we didn't hear anyone climbing into the slide, and the thumping sounds definitely didn't come from the slide. So naturally, I walked over to the slide and listened. Then I said, "Is someone in there?" And a voice said back, "Hello." It was a child's voice. I want to say a boy. They sounded like a toddler. I was 90% sure they said hello. My friends heard it too. We all gave each other these terrified looks. We had not heard anyone in the slide for the entire half hour we'd been there. I said down the slide, "Do you need help?" But there was no response now. In fact, we didn't hear the voice again. I had to assume there was a little kid stuck in there, so I climbed in and slid down. But as I slid down, expecting a child to appear around the corner the entire time, instead, I made it to the bottom only to find it was empty. I then did a scan around the ground level of the playgrounds and the surrounding area, and there was not a soul in sight. My friends were just as shocked as I was. There was literally not a soul besides us around, and I'm telling you, it was not possible for someone to have run away that quickly, especially not a young child. We checked every possible place to hide, and there was no one. We were already beyond freaked out, but when we heard the same voice once again come from the slide, this time saying, "Catch me," we all bolted for our bikes. We pedaled faster than we ever had back to my house down the block. We regrouped and caught our breath in my backyard. We were trying to be quiet though, since my dad was likely asleep already, and he would get mad if we were loud outside. So we sat amongst ourselves talking about what just happened, and any possible explanations. But things only got stranger when there was a knocking on the backyard gate. Yes, like someone was knocking as if asking permission to come in. I said, "Who is that?" thinking maybe it was a family member, but it was an unfamiliar woman's voice. She said hello, and then said, "Were you guys just at the park before?" We once again looked at each other in nervousness. There's a tiny crack in the gate where it met the fence that you could look through and see to the other side. So I peeked through it, and what I saw was a woman. middle-aged, standing on the other side with this big, wide, creepy grin on her face, and she was already looking right at me through the crack, as if she knew to do so. I stepped away from the gate because it was such a disturbing sight. I backed away and said, "No, sorry." The woman replied back, "Are you sure?" And Tony replied for me, saying, "No, we weren't." The woman said, "Okay, thanks anyway." I stepped back toward the gate to see if she left, but she was still standing there, smiling and looking at me through the crack. We were so freaked out that we went inside my house through the back door. We quietly hung out downstairs for a while, completely shook. That woman was terrifying. Everything about her. My friends were scared to get their bikes and leave, so they slept over and left in the morning. We didn't go back to that park for a long time after that. If we really wanted to explain it all away, we could go with the explanation that there was a kid who ran away from his mother and was playing at the park, and the mother was looking for her child. But it doesn't make sense because we rode home so quickly that no one on foot would have been able to see where we went. Also, we know for a fact that we didn't see any kid running around the playground. So what the actual hell did we hear inside of that slide? Who was that? Who was the woman? At this point, it's a distant memory that will simply never be solved. I never thought a normal walk in the park could turn into one of the scariest nights of my life, but it did. I live in a small suburban town, the kind where everyone knows everyone else, and most people think it's safe to be outside at any time. It was a Friday night in the summer of 2018. I had just finished a late shift at work, and I wanted to clear my head before going home. The local park was only a few blocks away from the apartment, and I used it a lot to jog or just walk when I needed to think. That night, it was quiet, almost too quiet. The sun had set maybe an hour before, and the street lights inside the park were on, but the main walking path still felt shadowed under the trees. I remember thinking how peaceful it was as I entered, the smell of freshly cut grass lingering in the air. I wasn't expecting anyone to be there. Most of the time on a weekday night, I'd be alone or maybe see a few people walking dogs or a couple of teenagers sitting on the benches. I had my headphones in, listening to music at a low volume, and I started walking along the main path. At first, everything was normal. I noticed a couple of dogs running in the distance, and some people walking slowly, laughing quietly. It felt calm, almost therapeutic, but then I started noticing little things that made me feel uneasy, though at the time I tried to brush them off. The first thing I noticed was a man sitting on a bench not far from the path. He was wearing a hoodie, the hood pulled up over his head even though it wasn't cold. He wasn't doing anything in particular, just sitting and staring straight ahead. I didn't think much of it at first. People sit on benches all the time, but as I passed, I realized he was looking at me. He didn't move when I walked by, didn't even shift his eyes from me. It made me uncomfortable, so I picked up my pace a little, telling myself he was probably harmless. I kept walking, trying to shake off the feeling, but then I heard footsteps behind me. I paused, and the footsteps stopped. I waited for a few seconds, then continued walking. They started again, matching my pace exactly. My heart started to beat faster, but I told myself it was probably just someone else taking their own walk. Still, the footsteps were too deliberate, too in sync with mine. I decided to take a different path, one that led through a smaller section of the park with fewer lights. The main path was still ahead, but I wanted to cut through a side trail that looped back toward the street. I figured I could get home faster that way and maybe avoid whoever was behind me. As I turned onto the trail, I noticed the man from the bench had stood up and was walking in the same direction. I thought maybe it was a coincidence, but something about the way he moved made me stop and stare. He wasn't jogging or taking a normal stroll. It was slow, almost like he was matching my pace without looking directly at me. I took out my phone and checked the time, then pretended to make a call, holding it up to my ear. The man didn't react. He didn't seem to care that I was looking at him. I forced myself to keep walking, trying not to panic. I thought maybe if I went faster, he'd eventually leave me alone. I broke into a light jog, and he did the same, keeping exactly the same distance behind me. My mind raced. Why was he following me? Was he dangerous? Should I run back the way I came? I made a decision to leave the park completely. There was a street exit just ahead that led back toward a well-lit neighborhood. I broke into a faster run, heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode out of my chest. The footsteps behind me sped up, matching mine perfectly. I didn't look back again, I just ran. When I reached the street, I slowed down and finally risked glancing behind me. The man had stopped at the edge of the park, standing at the shadows just inside the trees. I could see the hood over his head, the dark shape against the dimly lit path. He wasn't moving, just watching me. I don't know how long I stood there before I turned and ran home. My hands were shaking so badly I could hardly unlock my apartment door. I thought that would be the end of it. I told myself it was probably just a creepy guy who liked to follow people, maybe harmless. I kept imagining rational explanations. Maybe he was lonely. Maybe he was homeless. Maybe he just liked watching people walk. I tried to go back to my normal life, but I couldn't stop thinking about that night. A few nights later, I was back at the same park, this time during the day, trying to convince myself it was safe. I walked along the same path I had walked that night, scanning the area for anything unusual. Everything looked normal, and I started to relax a little, but then I noticed the same bench where I had first seen him. It was empty now, but someone had scratched something into the wood. I couldn't make out exactly what it said. It looked like letters carved hastily, some of them smeared as if whoever did it didn't want it to be legible. My stomach turned. I snapped a picture and walked away quickly. After that, I tried to avoid the park at night completely. But the worst part wasn't that I felt unsafe. It was the feeling that someone knew I had been there, that someone was waiting even when I wasn't looking. I started noticing small things in the neighborhood too. Shadows moving in the corner of my eye, a figure across the street that would vanish when I looked directly, a car parked down the block that I didn't recognize, lights turning on in houses when I walked past. I kept telling myself it was paranoia, that I was imagining things, but the memory of that night never left me. One evening, maybe 2 weeks later, I decided to go jogging again in the early evening, thinking it was safer than nighttime. I stayed on the main street, not going into the park at all. As I passed the edge of the park, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A figure was standing just inside the tree line, barely visible. It was the same height and build as the man from before, and the hood was up again. I froze in place. He didn't move, but I had this overwhelming feeling that he had been there for hours, just watching. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to move slowly, keeping my eyes on him. When I reached my car, I jumped in, locked the doors, and drove away, constantly glancing back in the rearview mirror. I never saw him again after that night. At least, not in the park. But sometimes when I walk through the neighborhood, or even near my apartment, I get that same feeling, that someone is watching me, just beyond my line of sight. I've checked the park security cameras in the past, and nothing unusual shows up. No one was captured entering the park at night, and the areas I walked are supposed to be covered by cameras. I don't know if he was someone who knew how to avoid them, or if it was someone who had been living there without anyone noticing. The strangest part is that I never heard anything directly from him. No voice, no movement besides the footsteps, just that presence. I've told friends and family, but most of them dismiss it as paranoia. I know what I experienced, and I can't explain it. I've learned to avoid that park completely at night, and even in the day I stay on the main streets, but the memory sticks with me. Sometimes late at night, I find myself staring at the dark tree line where he stood, wondering if he's still there, waiting for someone else. I never go back, but a small, irrational part of me feels like he could still be there, even now, hiding just out of sight, watching anyone who dares to walk alone. I don't know why he picked me, or if it was random. I don't know if he was dangerous or just interested. All I know is that feeling of being followed, being watched without anyone seeing. It's something I'll never forget. Even writing this now, I feel a chill remembering the quiet way he moved, how he stayed just out of reach but always present. I still take my walks, but I make sure I'm never alone in the park after dark. And sometimes when I'm home, I swear I hear the sound of footsteps outside, far enough away to be unnoticed, but close enough to remind me that I'm being watched. I tell myself it's probably nothing. I hope it is, but I can't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, he's still waiting, watching and stalking me like he was that night. I never reported him to the police. There was no evidence or proof that anyone was there except me. I thought about it, but I couldn't even describe him clearly. Just a hoodie, a vague shape, and the feeling that he knew everything I was doing. The uncertainty is what haunts me the most. I have no idea who he was, why he was there, or if he's still around. Even walking past that park during the day now makes me tense. Even now, years later, if I'm driving past, I sometimes feel like I see a figure standing at the edge of the trees. I can't tell if it's real or just my imagination. I don't stop to find out. I just keep driving, hoping I never have to walk that path alone again. This event happened less than 24 hours ago. The details are still incredibly vivid in my head. I'm not even sure how to classify this story because it was so bizarre. It was the only time in my life that I've ever felt like I was actually in serious danger. Myself and a group of 5 friends were hanging out at a popular public park in my area called the Overlook because it had a great view of downtown and nearby universities. It was very late in the evening, around 11 o'clock. It was supposed to be just a chill rendezvous. We had no plans of doing anything other than hanging out on the park benches and talking. However, one of my friends said that he had Roman candles in his trunk and suggested that we light them off. The Overlook is probably the worst place in the entire park to light fireworks, so I suggested we go to a more secluded part of the park called the Loop. The Loop is just a few minutes away from the Overlook, and most of it is surrounded by trees, so only people within that part of the park would be able to see what we were doing. All 6 of us piled into 2 separate cars and made our way over to the Loop. Although there was plenty of street parking within the Loop, we decided to park outside on a nearby street just in case anything went wrong. We started walking toward the actual Loop part, which is basically a huge cul-de-sac surrounded by woods. The driveway to the Loop is very long and winding, cutting through a thick tree line. You can't see anything within the Loop from outside because of the trees. We noticed a few cars parked in different spots, but we thought nothing of it as people walk in this park frequently. Still, it was strange for such a late hour. As we walked deeper into the Loop, we noticed several cars parked around the cul-de-sac with their lights off. Suddenly, a truck behind us started moving, with its headlights off. It was facing the opposite direction toward the entrance of the Loop, but it quickly made a U-turn and headed in our direction. We all found this strange and hid behind some trees. The truck passed us slowly, then continued around the Loop, drove back toward the entrance, stopped suddenly, and made another U-turn. All of our stomachs sank. The truck was small, probably only fitting 3 people, yet there were 6 of us, all over 6 feet tall. Still, we were frightened and creeped out. For some reason, my friend thought that was the perfect time to light a Roman candle, and sparks flew in our direction. The truck immediately turned its headlights on and started slowly driving toward us. We ran further into the tree line, which was on a downward slope, and we hid behind more trees. However, the truck went over the curb and drove through the grass toward us. Whoever was driving must have seen us running, because they turned on their high beams and laid on the horn. We sprinted as fast as we could into the woods. These weren't paths people normally walked through. There were bushes and tall grass, making it difficult to move. About 20 feet into the woods, we began hearing voices from the truck and saw more pairs of headlights turn on from the Loop. During our sprint, we had become separated. I was with 2 friends and we didn't know where the other 3 were, but that wasn't our main concern. 2 men stepped out of the truck and sprinted down into the woods with flashlights. My friends and I lay flat on the ground, trying to stay hidden. I managed to squeeze under a large bush, but my other 2 friends were still partially exposed. We were in a sunken part of the woods, with part of the Loop directly above us. It was quiet for a few minutes until we heard footsteps and saw flashlights from above. We didn't know if they could see us, but we were basically trapped. One group was searching from the front, and another was searching from above. We didn't understand why they were so upset about the fireworks. None of them had come near any of their vehicles, and fireworks are legal in our state. All we could do was hide and hope they didn't find us. After about 15 minutes, we saw the truck pull out of the grass and back onto the street, then drive away. The other headlights disappeared, but we never saw the men who had entered the woods come out. To make matters worse, one of my friends realized he had lost his phone somewhere in the woods while running. Finding it was surprisingly easy, but sneaking out of the woods and back onto the road leading to the loop was difficult. It was pitch black, and we couldn't use our flashlights or phones because we didn't want to alert the men of our location. We regrouped with one friend who had been hiding close by. He said one of the men had run right past him but didn't see him. However, he noticed the man was carrying what looked like a knife or some kind of melee weapon. After hearing this, we sprinted down the road toward the entrance. That's when we noticed the same truck from earlier, about 50 feet from the entrance. Fortunately, a dense patch of woods nearby allowed us to sneak into it and move toward the exit. Somehow, whoever was in the truck realized we started moving because they immediately turned on their high beams and pulled the truck to the edge of the woods. At that point, we ran as fast as we could. The truck followed us along the road, but we quickly cut deeper into the woods. Eventually, we reached a main road that led out of the loop. The truck didn't follow beyond the entrance. We took 2 different back roads to get back to our cars to make sure we weren't being followed. We didn't hear from our other friends until a few hours later. They had managed to escape much quicker by running without hiding. I'm never going back to the loop. I don't know what those people wanted or why they made such an effort to hunt us in the woods, but I'm sure it wasn't good. It felt like an eternity at the time, and I've never been more scared in my life. I truly didn't know what was going to happen.